superficial, resilient, prudent, intuitive, and literally. How many of you have ever used these words in conversations or essays? I'm sure many of you have. But, and be honest, how many of you actually know what they mean? One of my biggest pet peeves is when people use words they don't know. Today, I'm going to tell you the why and when of my pet peeve and how it can best be avoided. Every now and then, we all mistake the meaning of a word. It can't be helped, and I do it all the time. But that is not my pet peeve. What really bothers me is when people are aware they have no idea what a word means, and they use it anyway. I don't know if they're trying to sound smart or impress someone, but in my opinion, it has the opposite effect. If someone else in the room knows the word and points out the mistake, the person ends up looking stupid instead of intelligent. According to the Frontiers in Psychology Research Journal, the average person knows about 42,000 words, so there are literally thousands of other possible word combinations and choices that can be used that are not that one particular word the individual doesn't know. While the use of an incorrect word can seem inconsequential, it can actually have many negative effects. For example, these politicians found that out.
And now, this.
And now, politicians literally misusing the word literally.
The arrogance here is literally breathtaking.
Why should any of us attack children? Literally take food out of the mouths of children.
And literally had to bludgeon and pummel them into doing, not physically.
Literally went ballistic. Literally howling. Literally strangling.
Literally hanging high and very dry.
Literally, thank you.
To me, the only thing that's worse than using a word incorrectly and not realizing it is when it's pointed out and the person refuses to believe that they misused the word. Last year, I was at a Model UN conference, and I was representing China in the Women's Rights Committee. The topic was empowering female entrepreneurs, and we had just gotten back on track after digressing to the topic of birth control, which really wasn't part of the issue. The United States had suggested a plan to help females in developing countries start their own farming businesses through workshops and training. Then, the fateful moment came when Israel raised his placard from the back of the room, and with a look of confidence and superiority, he said this would cause inflation. When asked what he meant, he went on for 15 minutes explaining that inflation was when the price of something went down because so many people were selling the same thing in the same area. Now, everyone in the room knew that this was not correct, and we gently tried to explain to him that he was talking about supply and demand, not inflation. However, he retaliated with his former argument, saying that it was indeed inflation, not supply and demand. This debate went on for a while and was finally resolved when Germany got up and literally drew him a picture, and no, I'm not misusing literally, of what inflation actually was. As I'm sure you can imagine, people misuse words all the time, and for me, this happens especially in Model UN. So the question becomes, how do we avoid it? Well, the only real answer I have to that is stick to the words you know, and don't try and use ones you don't without looking them up first. If you want to use difficult or complex words in an essay, for example, good for you, but make sure you know what they mean before you write them down. Don't just spontaneously throw in the word spontaneous without knowing that it means spur of the moment or without prior planning. In conclusion, my biggest pet peeve is when people use words incorrectly. This happens all the time in many different places, but for me it's most noticeable during Model UN. And the best way to avoid being embarrassed by the misuse of a word is to look it up first or not use it at all. Lacking in depth, quick to recover, wise or cautious, instinct, and implying the most basic meaning. What do any of these things have to do with what I just said? They're the definitions of superficial, resilient, prudent, intuitive, and literally. So now you'll be able to spot them when someone else uses them incorrectly and confidently use them in the right context yourself.